Alright. I don't always dress like this.
Hello there, folks. I'm Dan Brown from a sort of interesting life.com. You're joining me on board good old narrowboat Tilly here, and just in case you can't tell, this is the creepy canal boating Halloween special. Now, I thought we would flip the camera around and have a look at me on the tiller for this trip. Just one of these random reverse angle shots I like to do every now and then. And really, I suppose we'll set the scene for this particular boat trip. As you can imagine, I thought if I'm going to go out on the stern and be on the tiller dressed like this, I'm going to do it in the most rural possible place where I'm least likely to come across anybody at all. But as you saw from that introduction shot and maybe a few of the random cuts in this video, I didn't quite make it unseen through this. Also, you'll notice that there's a lot of smoke comes from the chimney, particularly towards the end of the video. As originally, normally I would let the fire burn properly so that there wasn't all this smoke coming out if I was on the tiller while the fire was burning, which I try not to be. And in the typical way and in my ridiculous, stupid ideas of the moment, as I was getting ready to set out on this trip, and while I was outside, I saw the chimney really smoky, and I thought, you know what? I think I'll leave it, and that might give us some sort of mystical, smoky, creepy effect on the video. Whereas instead, it just meant that for the trip, I had smoke blowing all over me, which was not great fun, as you can imagine. But really, I suppose we'll just have a general chat about the creepier elements of the canal. And there's a lot of people who ask me questions like, is it scary being on the canal in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night, and things like that? So I thought, what better moment to talk about it than Halloween? Now, there's plenty of stories, as you would imagine, on the canals and, well, just all over Britain, and particularly in certain rural areas and these old abandoned buildings and churches, of all sorts of ghosts that haunt this place and that place. Now, I can't say that I've ever seen any particular spooky things that make me go, oh, it's a ghost, apart from maybe this video. But I will say that in general, I don't tend to get like scared or sort of, I don't know how you would describe it. I sometimes might start to trick myself and build myself up into one of those things where you can sort of, I don't know, just become quiet, hear a little sound outside, and then think, oh, what was that? And then maybe hear another sound, and then you're like, what was that? And then in that sort of, especially if this is going on in the absolute middle of the night and you've just woken up, so your mind isn't at full operation as well, where you can then start to build yourself up into these moments of like, ooh, there's someone or something out there, and there's someone stood on the towpath. And I always remember where I used to have my winter mooring down at Western Rin, hearing a bit of a noise outside one night, and then going up onto the stern after a minute or two had passed and just shining a really bright torch about, and then just suddenly finding just ahead of the boat there was a big brown dog just sat there looking at me. No sign of any human beings or anything, and he was just sat in total silence, just staring. So that was definitely a moment. But as a general rule, I would say there's nothing proper, like, sort of Halloweeny. We'll word it like that. There's nothing Halloweeny. What a terrible phrase I've just created. But when it comes to actually being out and having these experiences in the middle of nowhere on the boat, I honestly can't explain to you how unbelievably quiet and unbelievably dark it gets in certain places. Now, if you're saying, like, as I often say, how much I love astronomy, and so I've spent many, many hours wandering out and going out of my old hometown with a big bag full of binoculars and telescopes and goodness knows what else on me back, and literally walking in the middle of the night. I mean, I've had proper, well, very late nights into the small hours of the morning, basically, going out of where I used to live in Oswestry into the little hills and all the country lanes out of town to get out of the light pollution so I can see the stars and that. Whereas, obviously, with the boats, this was one of the things that really drew me to the boat idea. You are able to moor up in places infinitely more rural than even I had known growing up in a relatively small town that is itself in the middle of nowhere. And that, firstly, gives excellent astronomy conditions, But because you just don't get any light pollution at all, and there's obviously no street lights running along the canal if there's no actual roads around there, that makes it very dark in general. But for example, where the boat's currently moored, then basically Tilly is surrounded by very, very big trees. Now, it's an unbelievable thing. Like, say, somewhere like the back of Chirk Tunnel that you might have seen in previous videos, where it's almost like a little valley and there's tall trees, like really tall trees on either side, almost making it like a bit of a very tall tunnel. And even just mooring up there, where you're in the shadows practically all the time, it's so much darker than being maybe a mile up the canal where you might not have that sort of tree coverage. Now, if you put that sort of general darkness and blocking out of any light that might be there, on top of no actual immediate light sources around you to begin with, it's just unbelievable sometimes when I'll wake up in the middle of the night and even with your eyes really adjusted to the dark, you still have like a few moments of trying to let your eyes focus before you realise, oh no, it really is this dark that you can barely see anything whatsoever. So there's definitely things like that are like the sort of environment that you could easily start to let things play on your mind and hearing these sounds, like I say, outside. And there's a good, well, it's happened twice recently where I have woke up in the small hours, been in a complete and utter daze of that sort of late night, oh, I've just woken up and it's about 2 a.m. or whatever time it was. And I've thought that there's somebody on the side of the boat or outside the boat looking in. And there was a perfect example of this the other day where, and I honestly can't explain to you how real it was for a few minutes. I woke up and I could see what I thought was somebody holding a camera up from the water side of the boat, holding a camera up just in the bottom corner of one of the kitchen windows. And every now and then I could see a flash, as in the photo flash going off. And so I woke up, see this little box and the shadow of this little box of somebody maybe in a kayak or something like that, holding a camera up, looking into the boat. Now, the blind was down in the kitchen, but because this is me mind working with even less sense as it normally does in like the middle of the night, I then am just there, like absolutely frozen in place, looking around and really straining my neck. And I was looking, I'm like, I'm sure there's someone there. I'm sure, yeah, there's definitely a shadow. And then I'm moving my eyes around to see whether I can still see it out the corner of my eye and it's not a trick of the light and that sort of stuff. And I realised then that there's definitely somebody there with a camera popped up from the waterside looking into the boat at me. So then I see another flash. And at that point, I slowly go for my phone and then I slowly get the camera app up and turn the flash on so that the light's constantly there on so I can light this person up and catch them in the act. But as I'm doing this, I am also using my other hand to completely cover up the flash so that they can't see any light or any movement going on inside Tilly. And I start to slowly slither out of bed and slowly get up and then realise in just that moment of starting to move and then my mind waking up and figuring things out sensibly that the shadow of the camera in the corner of the window is actually the boat licence and the flash that I kept seeing was the carbon monoxide detector doing its every minute or 30 seconds little notification flash saying, yes, I'm still on. And of course, I was very relieved at that moment, to say the absolute least. But those are the sorts of things that, rather than being scared of being out there in such isolated places and in the dark, you may have seen old videos where I talk about just how late I do sometimes not get back to Tilly, and I'm on my bike at 2 a.m. if I've been at work late, and then I'm in town for a couple of hours trying to get videos and YouTube stuff done, and then set out on my bike. I mean, I've literally been setting out from Oswestry to get back to Tilly at 2 a.m. in the past. And it's not that or the travelling or anything like that that really ever scares me. It's more these stupid moments of waking up in total silence and total darkness, and my mind not quite being awake and starting to create these little scenarios that there isn't even another animal, yet alone person or spook involved. So Anyway, yeah, that's just a random few thoughts on creepy canal boating in this Halloween special. I suppose I will wrap things up and say please do consider checking out my other videos for loads of more normal boat life videos and scenery and stuff like that. Feel free to also check out my short boat life books for the Kindle. Search Amazon for The Narrowboat Lad if you'd like to help me out, or find links to all of my books and Facebook and Twitter and the Facebook pages and all that sort of stuff if you want to see loads of photos and updates from life afloat. But really, until the next time, thank you very much for watching. Keep it spook-worthy, keep it boat-worthy, and of course, farewell.